Alright, hello. I'm just going to make a quick demonstration on how to deform tubes along a curve shape. So a curve shape like this. I'm just going to make a couple points. I'm going to get some verticality in there. Just make sure we hit all three dimensions. Just as an example. Okay. There's a couple things I want to show actually. I want to show two different methods to deform along a curve. So I've got a curve shape here. And then the next thing you need is you need to have a cylinder shape. I'm not going to scale it because I don't want to introduce any variables yet. I'm just going to use the initialization here of the object itself. So for height, I'm going to put something like 200. Subdivisions do matter, but hold on. For radius, let's just make it a little bigger so we can see it. Let's make it 300. So one of the first things to know is you have a curve, you have an object, and then you have a curve. But if you don't know the exact length of the curve, it's just going to stretch this shape across the entire length of that curve. So you may not want it to stretch, and you may want to know exactly how long it is. So I'm going to introduce you to this little script here. This is very handy. You can make this a button on your shelf. In fact, I should have that myself. But you want to type in arclen-ch1. And what should happen there is you'll get this thing that says curve info 1. What does that mean? If you hit Control A, you'll have this new node next to your curve shape over here that says curve info. And under curve info, it'll show you arc length. So it doesn't matter if this thing is like moved in any way. The curve info will always show you exactly how long. See how it grows? It's going to grow in length. So I know that this curve length is exactly 3,730 centimeters. Okay, so that's the first thing, is kind of getting an idea of how long your curve actually is. So what that means, if I wanted to make a curve shape or an object that's going to follow that exact length, then I would enter the height here of 3,000. This exact amount right there. So this tube is now exactly the same length. So that's one aspect of it. Although you don't have to do that technically. So the next thing is I'm just going to rotate it holding J to 90 degrees. The next thing is that deforming shapes along curves works best if it's moving, if the object is moving starting at world 0, 0, and as it gets longer, moving along the positive x-axis. Okay, I know that's kind of a weird detail to know, but just run with it for now. So I'm just going to set the pivot to the far side of my object. I'm going to hold X to snap it to grid so that my object begins at world 0, 0, and as it gets longer, it's going to go in the positive X direction, or AKA the right side. Okay. Yeah. Screen right. Okay. So now I have this object perfectly in place. It's the exact correct length of the curve I have. Now I need to add some divisions, because if I don't have divisions, this cylinder can't bend. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some quite a few actually. I'm going to add, honestly, you could add like 100, you could add 80. If you're going to subdivide it, it doesn't need too many. So maybe more. I'm going to do 120 just because that sounds about right. How many I don't even need too many here. I'll probably reduce this to, let's do 16. Could even do 8. Let's see, 8. That works because if we're gonna subdivide it anyway, it doesn't really matter. But let's do 12. That works for me. Or whatever, let's just do 16. Okay, so that part doesn't matter, but you can enter it however many you want. The next thing that I like to do, I'm actually not sure if this is completely necessary, but once you've entered in these values and they're not going to change again, I would you can either make a duplicate copy, or you can simply delete history and freeze transform. Delete history, freeze transform. Okay, so notice how the pivot is correct here. Now all you simply do is you select the object, you select the curve, you go to deform, and you go to curve warp, like that. And notice that it snaps perfectly clean. Okay, it's partly due to a couple factors. One, we don't have any stretching really because we made the object the exact correct length of the curve. And also, again, the object originated at world 0, 0. Let's try it again. Let's just see if it was a fluke or not. So let's see what happens if I just put this here. Again, focusing on positive X direction. I'm just gonna YOLO this one here. Let's do like a slightly different shape. Let's add some, let's add a couple of loops here. Let's do, I don't know, 40, right? Something like that. Something like this. And we're going to, again, I believe in delete history and freeze transform, okay? And so we're gonna use that same curve take this object, select the curve, deform, and curve warp. Okay. Now notice, because the object wasn't long enough, it didn't go the entire width of that curve. Entire length of that curve. So we have to go into the attribute settings here, and we're actually going to have to stretch it. So where is it? Should be curve warp, mesh scaling, length scale. So you can grow this, right, to match. You can hit uncheck this keep length. So right now with keep length activated, it's going to keep the original length of how long the object was, but if I turn that off, it's going to stretch it all the way through to the end of the curve. So that's kind of a useful setting. And then you can also affect things like, you know, the scale along the path and different things like that. So you can mess with that, but that's the gist of it. If you're having issues with your object not deforming properly, my suspicion is that it's probably to do with having the object, your object that you want to deform along the curve, having it start at world 0, 0, just like this, and then having its length grow along positive x. That's probably the biggest factor for why your object is not scaling. Because as you saw in this example, the first example, we made an object that was exactly the correct length using that mel script. Again, I'll just write you that script, but it's arclen -ch1 to get the curve info node right here. So that was one case where we made the object the exact length of the curve. But then the second example, we had an object that was just random, and then we disabled the keep length feature right here to make it match. Okay, so hopefully that helps. You can deform any object cleanly using this method.